In the sunless body of our hive, the flock of the faithful grows. We are guided by our Great Father's sacred vision, protected by his loving hands. Within these holy shadows we dwell, while the impure bathe in spire-top starlight. And what lies between those stars? What sails beyond those distant suns? Shrouded in night, born within that eternal black, our redeemers, our gods, truer than the silent, long-dead emperor, the children of the void. We hear them in our dreams, we feel them in our blood. They call, and we will answer. We will rise and claim the engines of labor that have bound us in servitude. This world will burn. It will be cleansed, purified, made ready, and the heavens will deliver our reward. The denizens of the void squabble, unaware of their own insignificance. Their power struggles minute when compared to the majesty of what lurks within the great beyond. Empires of bone and gristle, merely morsels for the children of the stars, no matter the constitution of their faith, all pale under the shadow of the four-armed emperors chosen. For today, I shall elucidate the scions of the Star Children, the faithful who will be rewarded for their toil and emancipated from tyranny. The scions of the Great Devourer, the Genestealer cults. Rays of the four-armed emperor, vindicated with gifts of new strength, agility, and even the worthiest of disciples, though we toil within the dark depths of untold fiefdoms, each effort made hastens the arrival of the children of the stars. The angels' very essence distilled into our blood, since the first instance of their blessings on the moon of Imgal, their gifts forearming us against the false angels of the Imperium. Hiding within plain sight, each of us looks after our own, whilst graciously offering the teachings of the four-armed emperor to those who can be trusted. The tyranny of the Imperium, always ready to purge what they consider heretical, requiring caution. A single hibernating emissary of our masters, arriving on planets via asteroids or derelicts to begin preparations for ascendance. As more are inducted into our brood, the will of the children of the stars binds us through psychic means to strengthen our resolve. Patience, our most prized virtue, as we bide our time to overthrow our oppressors. As our patriarch grows, it shall take hosts for its offspring to be born, each new generation of ascended beings bearing more visible gifts of its majesty. The Genestealer kiss, as the Imperials call it, impregnating the bodies of the first of the brood and revealing the messianic grandeur of the Star Children. Such first-generation hybrids bear signs such as their purple-hued complexion and needled teeth. Able to reproduce via male, female, or even agender species such as the orcs, so long as the patriarch's tongue deposits its DNA into a host body, their somatic and germline cells shall accept their gifts and lose all memory of their impregnation. Peculiar cases, such as those of the Imgal Genestealers, exploiting the semi-sentient leech creatures known as Sith to propagate their brood. As a result of such breeding, their offspring appear less humanoid than is typical, and carry dominant genes whereby all their future offspring, no matter their parentage, shall produce similar results. Now bearing the Genestealer's genetic code within their bodies, their ultimate goal is to create pure strain births during their 5th generation, readying for the day when the cult shall become one with the impending arrival of the Star Children. Marked by the coloration of their high fleet of origin, even should they have their connection to their brood mind severed, pure strains are capable of rebuilding a cult from the foundations up, optimized as they are to infect new hosts. Benefiting from larger brains, jaws of incredibly sharp teeth, with incisors in deference to even a single molar, their thick carapace hides vary in toughness depending on whether their hosts are derived from the frail Eldar all the way to the more robust Orkoid constitution. Their skin are like to Imperial flak armor, allowing them to charge lines of lasgun fire. Each claw of a Genestealer is capable of rending even through ceramite armor. Adapting redundancies for their respiratory and circulatory systems, regardless of their host genetics, digestive systems are rendered expendable due to our phage cell method of nourishment. incredibly tolerant of cold environments, allowing us to survive even within the confines of space hulks and unheated voidcraft. Our ability to slow our metabolic rate allows us to survive without food or water for years. Each iteration of offspring becoming more hunched, not as an infirmity, but a true sign of their skeletal structure, aligning with the perfect visage of our masters. Such spring-like mobility, combined with additional limbs, allows for swift movement. The broodmind taking shape as decades or even centuries pass. Only when a planet-wide rebellion, which can topple the ruling classes within hours is possible, does the Patriarch decide it is time to strike. Preparing generations for the day of ascendance as their brood exponentially grows, all are faster, stronger, and tougher than any human, whose civilizations prove the ideal staging ground for our ascension due to their dependence on tyrannical hierarchies, which are easily exploited. The first instance of worship pledged to the four-armed emperor difficult to ascertain due to the many tendrils of its majesty which have probed the galaxy for millennia. The first officially uncovered by the Imperium of Man would be sighted during 680.M41. The great pit of the mining colony named Gosar Quintus, investigated by Inquisitor Chagrin and a team of Tempestus Scions, following strange communiques that nothing was amiss, despite conflicting reports levied at the Triss dynasty, who ruled its domains. A kill team of the Deathwatch Space Marines departed. None of the 5 Astartes returning from their mission to the Delver world. It would fall to the seconded Ultramarines chaplain, Ortan Cassius, to muster his own Aquila kill team, his men finding hundreds of cultists plumbing the depths of Gosar Quintus. The Triss dynasty, proven to have spread the influence of the four-armed emperor far and wide, using mining industry as a guise. Though the Patriarch of Gosar was slain, untold others now slumber across the void. Corroborating reports of cultist sightings during the 40th millennium, such as seen during the Pyropurge of Joust of Septima, the infestation of New Gidlam, and the corruption of the maiden world of Virgos. What was once considered a classification of human mutation now was understood as a Xenos-bred malady. Remnants of the freighter Pegasine, spreading to the world of Hope Foster with the dawn of the 41st millennium. Other instances, such as the gnarling of Forge World Echevoria, schism of the Tau Sepworld of Xai Mayen, and purge of the Space Hulk, Sin of Damnation during 589.M41 by the Blood Angels, were but a prelude to the true extent of the expansion. Constructing a giant purple gargant, claw beast, upon the scrap world of Dakar during the Xenos War, the greenskin Gurnmech of the Iron Fist fought the Devil Dogs of the Vestroyan Firstborn, rending their forces limb from limb. Painhabs of the world of Vitria, daubed in the doomsayer writings of a repeated word, Cryptus. Only during 998.M41 would such portents become clear, as the Cryptus system known as the Shield of Baal fell to ruin. For even during the 42nd millennium, our influence continues to outlive holdouts of the Corpse God and its thralls. The world of Vigilus within the mouth of the Nakmund Gauntlet, devastated by combat made against the Pauper Princes. The Scribe Moon of Hexensix, Forge World of Ghoulrite, Agri World of Florenci 9, and Jungle World of Xiophora, all sites to which tyrannoforming was attempted. Despite the efforts of false angels, Xenos, and Chaos warlords aplenty, none have staunched the spread of our gospel. The originator of the Genestealer brood, known as the Puriae, the Patriarch acts as the vector of all subsequent offspring and fulcrum of the cult's broodmind. The first batch of host victims, known as Contagii, now carrying the genetic code of the Puriae, each shall experience an urgent need to procreate in order to spread the gifts of the children of the stars. Many becoming brood brothers who resemble their original species closely. The Genestealer Patriarch can control each at their own discretion, enabling them to act as a conduit of their objectives to achieve ascension. The first generation of Genestealer, known as Malignasi, each of these hybrids bears 5 to 6 limbs, most closely resembling the Patriarch's semblance, the foremost champions of such kindred, known as Acolyte hybrids. Interbreeding rife to keep the purity of the Star Children's genome intact. As the most recognizably inhuman of their creed, the first generation brood must remain concealed beneath urban populous zones, and master the arts of stealth to evade suspicion. Silencing those who stray too close to their dens, the Malignasi also form the inner coven of their Patriarch, protecting their liege with procured mining equipment and imperial weaponry. The second generation hybrids, though stooped in stature, regard us more human in appearance in regards to their eyes and jawline. These offspring are capable of communicating in Low Gothic, yet do not pass as Imperial citizens. Much stronger than their predecessors, allowing them to carry larger mining tools and other heavy weapons, many work within industrial brotherhoods to aid in gathering resources used by their wider community. The third generation, known as true hybrids, many are easily mistaken for abhumans due to their less prominent mutations, though many obscure their rigid foreheads, mauve-hued skin, and additional clawed limb beneath garb to prevent compromising their true nature. Some finding their calling as a Kelemorph gunslinger to spearhead revolutionary uprisings or locust bodyguards of the senior Magus. Their protection of the Brood Coven is of utmost importance, and with the days of Ascension drawing nearer, singular warriors are required. The fourth generation, known as Primaceae, this brood are near indistinguishable from human, serving their patriarch's wishes by infiltrating positions of power within Imperial society. Both Magus and Genestealer Primus positions, given to the most talented of individuals. Other specialized roles such as the Biophagi, Klamavi, Nexuses, and Sancti are also drafted from this generation. Adopting the appearance of industrious and conscientious workers whose deeds preclude them from scrutiny, new cults begin to spread to other planets should such individuals acquire passage aboard outbound freighters. Spawning hybrid metamorphs to ready for the impending war now so close to fruition, these expendable warriors are made only to kill and have no other useful purpose for Genestealer society. Once the fifth generation has been achieved, the cycle of Puriae begins anew. The pure strain Genestealers capable of siring cults on new bastions of the stars should they grow to the standing of a new patriarch. Targeting only spacefaring civilizations in order to propagate far and wide, whilst orcs prove unreliable hosts due to their innate senses to sense un-orky behavior. Both the greenskins and Kroot species can also smell changes in their pheromones. The Eldar, typically not viable due to their keen psychic abilities to divine future outcomes and scarce population density, Tau also prove difficult to change due to their connection to their ethereal caste. Thus, humans are the most ideal candidates for the spread of Genestealer cults. Their overpopulated hives and ignorant populaces, the perfect harvest for the Children of the Stars bounty. Procuring weapons and armored vehicles from what can be stolen from their environments, so as not to arouse suspicion, cultists prefer not to seize Astra Militarum armaments due to the ever-watchful eye of the Departamento Munitorum. The cults of the Four-Armed Emperor myriad in their beliefs, ideals and trappings. What remains constant is their modesty, tireless work ethic, and adherence to the will of the divine angels of the stars. Utterly united in their shared vision, regardless of their standing within Genestealer society, each cult is a family tree with branches that spread across both known and uncharted space. The will of the Patriarch absolute, while their Magus serves as the equivalent of a Grand Vizier. Their Primus leads the cult's military forces, forming the trifecta known as the Brood Coven. Presiding over as many as billions of souls within the depths of their domains, each brood cycle sows anarchy, dissent and confusion amongst their enemy societies, as inbreeding gives rise to strange new mutations within their highly mutable brood. The primogenitor of a cult's influence known as a Genesis infestation, such as was made by the cult of the Pauper Princes on Chance's Vale. Each subsequent planet to which they spread is known as a splinter cult, bearing the hues of chitin and flesh of their forebears. Forfeiting their genetic colors only should it be necessary to blend better with their new surroundings, each will nonetheless adopt armbands or tattoos as a show of allegiance to their cult. Each population center of a planet known as a gene sect. While some planets only bear one such sect, others are sprawling masses of organisms, and so can contain dozens at a time, each differing slightly in their coloration and cultural markings. All derived from the same patriarch, no matter their differences, all band together with the coming of the Star Children to their planet. Each sect containing several hundreds of members within, and are divided into smaller claws of as few as 50 to as many as 100 souls. Each claw assembled and disbanded when required to carry out their cult's objectives. Both the Magus and Primus command several claws simultaneously, each composed of bioforms most suited to their tasks. Unleashing a single pure strain Genestealer, or even an entire brood of the first curse, to new potential gene sects when their resources can spare. Even should a Genestealer cult fail in their uprising, their influence will have spread to begin anew within another population center of the same world, or one far more distant. Only a single patriarch typically permitted per world it infects. Depending on the size of their influence, they shall nonetheless sire as many Maguses and Primuses as required to achieve their goal. The fall of a Patriarch, replaced with a pure strain Genestealer only during the direst of circumstance. More likely is the need to create an additional Patriarch on the same planet, should its population be commensurately large to require one. Should two gene sects of different Patriarchs roam, they shall compete for resources and on rare occasions combat one another. The distance required to prevent a psychic backlash from their Patriarch's brood minds, necessitating each be far from one another. Committing to a war footing only when achieving critical mass, Genestealer cults rely on secrecy more than any other known faction of the grim future. The meddling of Adeptus Arbitris patrols or inquisitorial investigations, the greatest threats to our designs. Elements of the Militarum Tempestus and Deathwatch Space Marines, the surgical strike to which Imperial authorities intend to eradicate our ascension. It only takes a single lifeform to escape their purges to ensure the survival and replenishment of the cult. Similar in strength to a planetary defense force, what cultists lack in overwhelming firepower is made up for in numbers, fanaticism, and ferocity. Their ambush is synchronized by the broodmind to catch their enemies off guard. The cult's primus, designating Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, and other high-value targets to be the prey of pure-strain Genestealers, their deadliest warriors attacking groups in an attempt to carve through their ceramite forms. Acting as one on the day of uprising, assuming no plans have gone awry, few worlds can survive the first wave of insurrection, as the entire infrastructure of such civilizations are sabotaged, dismantled, or captured. The shadow in the warp, cast by the inbound Tyranid Hive Fleet, this psychic pole panics Astronomicon choirs and cuts off all communication to the wider Imperium. The painstakingly arranged strategies of each GeneSec's Nexuses orchestrating an inescapable web of compounding strikes, as Clamavus operatives seize communication infrastructure, calls for aid are stifled as hordes of the Star Children's hosts claw their way to the surface. Successful uprisings, allowing Primuses and their remaining forces to regroup and lay claim to new worlds in the name of the Four-Armed Emperor under the guise of industry. The hive mind of arriving Tyranid fleets assumes control of the planet's cult once their work is done. Willing to retreat into the depths once more, should unexpected interlopers, such as orcs or Hrud migrations, stymie their efforts, entire new generations will propagate as war rages above until their elders pick the optimal time to reassert dominance. Premature uprisings, enacted should their gathering of resources prove limited, or should the cult's patriarch sense its hive fleet destroyed. Its attempts to reconnect with the Star Gods see their forces spread far and wide from their base of operations by any means possible. Conquering entire star systems if necessary to bolster their psychic presence are like to a beacon in the void. Eventually, they shall reconnect with the hive mind if left uncontested, providing a rich bounty for the appetite of their overlord. Witnessing the glints of the Tyranid flotilla in the night sky, the arrival of the Star Gods clouds the skies with thick mycetic spores as the enraptured populace celebrate their ascension beyond mere mortal flesh. Fighting beside their distant relations as the remaining gasps of adversaries are slain, many approach their claw-armed appendage kindred with open arms, whilst the Patriarch's sentience is subsumed into the superorganism. Pure strains setting upon their own parents as each subject of the cult is piled high to sate the hunger of the great devourer. The digestion pools are filled with regurgitated bodies as the gruel of civilization is drunk deep by the bioships in orbit via capillary towers. The many forms to which the Genestealer cults can take, humanoid in standing as the ideal template to which to adapt. The Orc Xenos are a genetic dead end in this regard, and infected only when no other option is available as a green brood. Using such broods as a temporary means to sustain themselves, Orc patriarchs rarely allow their generations to mutate to the point of creating pure strains, due to the Orc physiology's need to die in order to spread additional spores. Eldari broods also taking much longer to create even the first stage of mutations due to their extended lifespans. Their vigilance also undermines many attempts to burgeon a cult, whether upon craftworlds or within the depths of Komorra. Yet humans are by far the most compatible with Genestealer adaptations, on occasion wildly divergent from the norm. The first sighting of the Imgal variant, rendered feral by their psychic severing from their hive mind of origin, nonetheless showing intriguing mutations. Chameleonic of flesh, tentacled of mouth, and able to elongate and even fuse their fingers into curved blades. Each hive mind it encounters regardless refuses to reabsorb them, abandoning the cult for unknown reasons. Broodlords, or Corporaptor Primus, created by the hive mind to conduct rapid engagements upon nearby planets. This incredibly strong leader species, whilst excelling at combat, utilizes its synapse abilities to communicate effectively with its hive mind and assumes the role of a patriarch ahead of Hive Fleet invasions. Few patriarchs being broodlords in origin, both are nonetheless regarded by its cult as the father, whether a broodlord or an ascended pure strain of a prior cult. Their psychic links with their offspring, turning them into potent psychers, as their bloated forms double over the size of an Astartes. Acting as a beacon to attract the hive mind, each is strong enough to bisect its enemies with tooth and claw, their diamond-hard talons capable of slicing through armored vehicles, though typically it never leaves its den, to which it orchestrates the cult's actions. Ruling alone until a Magus is sired during the 4th generation of the cult, these psychically gifted individuals vie for the Patriarch's favor by infiltrating the host world society using charisma, manipulation, and intelligence gathering. Always bald in appearance and heavy-boned in skeletal form, the Magus operates in plain sight as a spokesman for the cult's ideals, often under the guise of a religious, political, or social agitator. Their psychic shadow growing should they continue to spread their influence. Eventually, such a force coalesces into a being known as a familiar, acting as a nimble attendant which excels at spycraft, connected as they are by a psychic bond. Genestealer Primus is the next in line of the hierarchy. This military advisor coordinates efforts to ready for the Day of Ascension, while simultaneously ensuring means to spread the cult's influence to other planets. A born leader capable of masterminding plots to procure voidcraft, armored vehicles, and other resources for the Brood's army. This capable duelist, often sired during the 3rd generation, keeps to the shadows until the time to strike. Armed and armored with the greatest equipment the cult can scavenge, its bloodstream concocts toxins which can be fired from needle pistols or slathered under claws. Their sentient blades, grown from the Patriarch's own biothrone secretions, able to steal life energies from those struck. The cult Benefictus, specializing in harnessing the broodmind's psychic potential. These 4th generation genestealers are drawn from their psi-capable gene stock and mutated to grow in large strains to better disperse the broodmind's telekinetic force. Such raw power, rivaling the force created by a las cannon, which proves useful in breaching bunkers or opening sealed vaults. When brute force is insufficient, Benefictus unleash terrible hallucinations onto their foes, now bolstered following the psychic awakening. The cult's Biophagus, sired during the 4th generation. These savants of gene manipulation and bioalchemy ensure reliable spread of the Star God's gifts using virulent concoctions. Infiltrating Officio Medicae hospitals, med-paste factories, and macro-alchemical facilities in order to divert resources to the cult. Some, such as the cult of the Twisted Helix, have managed to extract germ seed directly from their kin in order to spread the Star God's gifts without the need of the Genestealer's Kiss or Pure Strains. Conducting experiments on aberrants using tools such as the Injector Code. On the battlefield, such injected stimulants can enhance such warriors' agility and strength, using concoctions such as gene brews. The most capable Biophagus, given alchemical familiars by their patriarchs to enhance their capabilities. These reclusive souls only leave the confines of their laboratories when the Day of Ascension calls. Clamarthus, broadcasting the creed of their cult across the airwaves. These specialists rally the populace using propaganda, speaking of emancipation from tyranny and calls to arms to reclaim their world. Hacking communications using Vox Scrambler arrays in order to hijack broadcasts. Their interception of enemy patrols and military deployments are an invaluable tool to maintain the cult's secrecy as their numbers swell. Combining their equipment with the Patriarch's psychic resonance, these voices of the living god which dwell below utilize the broodmind to transmit null waves alike to a miniaturized shadow in the warp. Causing cranial ruptures, intense migraines, and burst eardrums to those who endure their sonic barrages. Those unworthy to hear the word of the Star Gods are robbed of their hearing, or silenced outright for their rejection of salvation. Kelomorphs, inspiring their kindred as a symbol of their rejection of authoritarian rule. This multi-limbed gunslinger exploits the romanticized figure of a desperado, wielding the Liberator autostubs to put down the wicked. Adapting not only dexterity, but also hypersensory awareness in order to analyze their surroundings. Their rapid-fire neurons bolster their reaction speed to superhuman levels, as their thermoceptive vision enables perfect marksmanship even at night. The epitome of the Patriarch's mastery of the populace's psyche made manifest. Both Underhive gangers and Uphive aristocrats style themselves after the Kelomorph, seeking out the sigils of the cult on their path to indoctrination. Crafting Valonian bullets for the gunslinger's autostubs, which are capable of piercing ceramite plating, or even lightly armored tanks. Many perish willingly from their radio-laced toil, glad to have provided the means for their hero to continue fighting. the robed majesty of the Locus, concealing bodyguards of the cult's magus. These Genestealer equivalents to lictors are capable of besting even the most legendary foes in martial skill, whether they be an Eldar Exarch or a Blade Guard veteran. Thwarting attempts on their magus' life, standing motionless at their postings for hours on end, these Sentinels of the Star Gods wield dual blades to protect their master, concealing toxin-laced stinger tails. Descending into rapid flurries of motion until their foe is slain. With conflict concluded, the Loci regain their composure and readjust their robes, ready to once more maintain their vigil, as their mere presence broadens their magus' psychic influence. Carrying neurotraumal rods crafted in partnership by their magus and Clamathus, these staffs of office broadcast synapse-disrupting frequencies which undermine the judgment of even Inquisitors as they suffer migraines, brain spasms, and visions of suffering. The Nexos, aiding their Primus in analyzing vulnerabilities in their dens, military maneuvers, and plans for the Day of Ascension. Their mastery of subterranean ambushes allows for flanking of enemy positions and exploitation of a hive's infrastructure. Coordinating their forces not from the front lines, but within underground stratagems, these beings, benefiting from a fraction of the Patriarch's cognitive acuity, organize billions using their master's psychometric powers. Absorbing the memories and conscious thoughts of every member of their cult at whim, the Nexos transfers sensory data into constant streams of instructions, which are sent to their forces as actionable objectives. Capable of assimilating their subjects' entire life experience with the merest touch, millions of such imprints are stored within their brains, allowing for incredibly complex orders, which are nonetheless very exhausting to perform. The Reductor Saboteurs, specializing in explosives, these sappers compulsively tinker with their craft in an endless pursuit to create the deadliest demolitions. Seeking out materials from toxin-rich hive sumps, servitor dumping grounds, and other hazardous environments. The use of such incendiary devices prove highly beneficial during the opening stages of the cult's uprising. The Sanctuses, targeting any potential threats to the cult's survival with both sniper rifle and Sanctus biodaggers given by their Patriarch. Their camo cloaks, when combined with low-light conditions, render such assassins as nigh invisible. Their blades constructed by the liquefied essence of vanquished cultists and imbued with biomatter. Any struck by their edge inflict agony as a million screaming souls of the deceased assail their minds. Suffused with the psychic scent of their targets by their Patriarch, allowing them to track them to their location. These hunters in the shadows can traverse through the most enclosed spaces with ease, moving in total silence. Pilfering tri-lens goggles from Departamento Munitorum stockpiles to aid in their tracking of targets using infrared and subsonic spectrums. When not deployed, the Sancti dwell high above their Patriarchs within its throne room. Firing needle rounds from their rifles, laced with toxins crafted by their cult's biophagus. These poisons, crafted from the blood of pure strains, render those afflicted insane, causing those of a psychic disposition to be overloaded by the hive mind's overwhelming majesty. Accompanied by soulsight familiars, which act as spotters when in sniping positions, the Patriarch, when submerged within its Genesis pool, views through the eyes of its form to better locate its quarry. The vast proportion of the cult, comprised of hybrids, when the need for brute force is required, aberrants take to the field. These hulking monstrosities are perversion of the purity of the Star God's gifts. Whether the result of spoiled ovipositor implantation or a quirk of warp manipulation, all that bears knowing is that aberrants, though imperfect, regardless have their uses as harbingers of destruction. Wielding enormous power hammers and picks as they charge enemy lines, their mindworm familiars direct them to their targets and implant the mightiest of aberrants with a portion of their Patriarch's own biomass. As bones break and reform, the entity is reborn into a being known as an Abominant, its agonies rewarded with an even larger frame and regenerative abilities which ensure its survival in battle. Leading the charge of its aberrant kin as their leader, the Abominant is viewed by its kindred with saint-like virtue. Their rages lasting entire days, sated only with rampages commensurate with their might. Aberrant hypermorphs and abominations, noted for their protruding spinal columns which morph into tails. Their barbed hooks slice through flak armor like parchment, enhancing their already incredible combat capabilities. Adrenal, Malstrain, and Vectori strain Genestealers, likewise found within bespoke environments such as space hulks. Each cult is molded by their environment, allowing them to become the apex predator of their surroundings. Subsuming all manner of cultures within their embrace, each cult of the Children of the Stars offers curiosities which humans cannot help be drawn to. The prospects of community, freedom, and righteous vengeance too powerful for most to deny. Hive world cults by far the most numerous due to their relative ease of assimilating their vast populations of low socioeconomic classification. Their benighted underhives are the perfect breeding ground for a brood's early stages. Civilized worlds benefiting from established trading routes which allow for a cult spread more easily. Feudal worlds are much easier to control should the cult infect senior members of the ruling knight houses whose very word is law. Deaf worlds utilized by the Imperium as training grounds for military regiments. Though no cult can burgeon on such planets, a singular cunning pure strain can nonetheless infect those posted, aiding in the spread of its genome off-world. As much as 85% of agri-worlds cultivated to grow crops aplenty, it is no wonder why gene-stealer cults can thrive with such readily available biomass. Military cults, by contrast, whilst incredibly risk-prone, can bring vast armies into the fold if successful. Feral world cults, capitalizing on the superstitious and technologically regressed inhabitants with ease. Their supplying of superior equipment to such planets' inhabitants earns them a pedigree of deific beings, all the better to rapidly spread their creed. Shrine world cults, likewise manipulating its subjects' reliance on religious fervor. Frontier world cults, with few lawmakers to monitor for signs of corruption, ensure a slow but steady rise to a cult's progression. Creating icons to rally their followers under a single banner, most brood brothers bear crests on their chests in the form of stylized bioforms known by its followers as a worm, with the most significant and prosperous cults as follows. The cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, the template to which all Genestealer cults follow. Its control of the Delver world of Gosar Quintus allowed its subjects to spread to every outpost ruled by the Trist dynasty, and even further flung fiefdoms such as Thousand Isle. Honoring the mining cults of Trist as their sigil of a stenciled worm is set with precious gemstones in its eye. Though their forebears were entirely purged by the Death Watch, the offspring of Gosar Quintus continued their work to this day. The patriarch of the cult of the Bladed Cog, inhabiting the world of Fineminster Gamma upon landing aboard the freighter Red Spark. Their revolt against the Magos Dominus Ovid Fencium promised emancipation from the Mechanicus' tyranny. Vindicated in knowing that life existed beyond the scope of their planet's smog-choked sky, the Forge Clades of Fineminster now bear the bastardized Cog Worm as its subjects tattoo slogans of praise on their collarbones and spines. The Brotherhood of the Hive Cult, first sighted on the world of New Gidlam, infesting 12 of its 13 vast hive cities. Tens of billions perished as war erupted from the depths, with banners of the Bladed Worm heralding devastation. Militarized to the extreme with their sigil adorning knuckle dusters, daggers, throwing stars, and other weaponry. Their regalia of bone and purple closely mimics that of Highfleet Leviathan, to which it is assumed their patriarch owes fealty. The Inner Worm Cult, hailing from the abattoir world of Fleischgate, their butchery of groks and other bovine animals to feed the Maudlin system has spawned a gruesome band of insurgents. Their saw-spined worm sigil, honoring the meat slasher tools of their trade, the cult draws inspiration from pulling the enormous parasites from the intestines of their livestock, which in them they see the reflection of their toil within the guts of imperial oppression. Carving not only flesh but also rock, steelwood roots, and industrial detritus from their machinery, the grim trophies which adorn their uniforms are likewise cleaved from their foes with sawblade and knife edge. The cult of the Pauper Princes, originating from the slum world of Chance's Vale, their assimilation of the denizens of its numerous shanty towns of the coastline, bear flesh dried by salt mining minerals of their lifeless oceans, easily convincing the populace to join the cult as an alternative to abject poverty, even by imperial standards. Desperation is their calling card, as the ramshackle worm to which they identify is now worn by several gene sects, such as the Devoted Sons, Writhing Worm, Scarlet Talon, and Glacian gene sect. Their Magus, Maravich Tendark, conducting a sermon in praise to his patriarch, the Star Savior, each day of the Emperor's ascension, his death at the hands of a rattling sniper, diving in the path of its weapons fire to save his patriarch, only bolstered the cult's fervor, stretching even to the throne world itself. Now praising Maravich as a saint to their cult, a splinter gene sect of the Pauper Princes have since spread their influence to the Sentinel world of Vigilus, following the birth of the Cicatrix Maledictum, naming themselves the Firsting Worm. The cult of the Rusted Claw, rising from the depths of the mining world of Newseam, the Minecore toil to unearth precious metals from the planet's crust, and have for years lined the pockets of their upworld benefactors. Leveraging the populace's embitterment to their overlords as kindling for the flames of rebellion, the Rusted Claw sigil of the shattered cog of imperial industry, being consumed by a metaphagic worm, exemplifies their nihilistic outlook. Submitting to the inevitability that the void shall consume all, as rust eats away to all that whines and whirs, the divine entropy of the metaphagic worm is welcomed by the cult, should its rampage sate their patriarch's endless hunger. The cult of the Twisted Helix, established upon the Medicae-class civilized world of Vajorium-3, this exporter of medical supplies has proven a highly exploitable method of spreading the cult's influence. Learning to extract the germ seed from their genetic code to spread more easily across their domains, biophagists inject such a boon into hosts via curative syringe vials under the cover of oddly colored smoke which belches from the chimneys and glass pipelines of countless medifactoria. Their sigil of a stylized caduceus sigil, used by medics and apothecaries the galaxy over. Though aberrations and mutations are rife among those infected by the cult's methods, they all shall regardless rejoice when their hive mind arrives to consume the Vajovium system. The cult of the Second Sun, inhabiting the hive world of Necromunda. Within Hive Secundus, the gene sect endured bombings from Hive Primus until the city capsized and was declared quarantine extremis. As the populace were forbade to speak of Hive Secundus' existence, the cult of the Second Sun began to grow. Their mutations bolstered by the rat bombs which had destroyed their home. Last of the major cults is that of the Brotherhood on the world of Ikar 4, the Second Tyrannic War of 992.M41, marking their ascendance as Hive Fleet Kraken approached. Thwarted by the Ultramarines, aided by the efforts of Inquisitor Angmar, those of the Brotherhood who escaped the wrath of Marneus Calgar were felled by the 13th Penal Legion, the Last Chancers. First of the minor cults is that of the Behemoid Undercut, this offshoot of Hive Fleet Behemoth, operating within several worlds of the realm of Ultramar, despite the attempts of Chaplain Orton Cassius to purge them from the Avenging Sun's domains. Its founders said to worship the hulking Carnifex, Old One Eye, as a saint of their order. Its members ritually remove their right eye and scar the surrounding flesh, in imitation to the prophet of their religion, and attack as a single, overwhelming force. The Bringers of Enraptured Joy, identified by Watch Fortress Castilos Nullifact of the Death Watch within the northern regions of the Segmentum Ultima. This roaming cult poses rogue traders in order to evade suspicion of their fleet. The cult Viridian, situated on the death world of Moraz 3, despite the best efforts of the Catachan jungle fighters stationed on the world to purge the cult from its carnivorous jungle flora, Moraz 3 now is fully controlled by the Gene Stealers. The cult of the Grizzle Pit Convicts, liberating the penal world of Damna 4-5, these indentured mining laborers rose up with the arrival of Hive Fleet Leviathan to the Reductus sector during the Stratos campaign. Overthrowing the Damna 4 wardens, though the penal world to which they burgeoned has since been consumed by the hive mind, the Grizzle Pit Convicts continue their furore of emancipation, continuing their spread to distant worlds. The cult of the Star Saviors, festering within the world of Evergrind for over a millennia. Despite losing both their Patriarch and Magus during a precision strike by the Imperial Navy, their Primus Adamant ordered his men to leave the planet of their so-called last hierarch. Adamant slain by the remaining defenders of Evergrind, causing further disruption among their ranks, the world now endures endless post-apocalyptic pandemonium commit by scavengers, savage tribes, and aimless cultists. Cult Tendricul, originally laying claim to the space station designated Delugan. The Black Guardians of Craftworld Ulfway, in their attempts to purge the facility of their presence, invited disaster upon their own people. Farseer Anathrol Starseeker, culling both Gene Stealers and humans in her rampage. With the arrival of the Black Templars to the station's hails for aid, Ulfway were driven off by their blades and bolters. The survivors of the cult escaping to the maiden world of Virgos. Sigils of their kin have been found on over a dozen planets within a single year since the incident upon the Delagan. The cult of the Void Brood, setting upon the frontier world of Hope Foster following the birth of the Great Rift. Their alliance with the Hive Fleet, which beset the agri world of Terenzi 9, was spared consumption by the Star Children. Ignored by the Hive Fleet forces and recognized simply as spare biomass ready to be devoured when needed, the cult now roams aboard vast bulk freighters alongside their bioships, aiding in the continued harrying of the Terenzi system. The cult Tenebrous, swallowed by a warp storm during 998.M41 and stranded within the Garden of Nurgle whilst aboard their bulklanders. These chaos-corrupted cultists now serve the Grandfather, spreading their defilement of the Star Children's gifts. The Sons of Jormungandr, or Sons for short, hailing from the space stations of the Black Nebula of the Valasi sector. These scions of Hive Fleet Jormungandr prepare thousands of Voidcraft to conquer the system. Followers of the splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Behemoth, the Star Chosen, laying claim to the agri-world of Cornucopia, the Ultramarines' 8th Company attempted to purge the world of their influence with Blade and Bolter, until only Exterminator's action proved sufficient to prevent their ascension. The Star Kindred of the Gleptid Reach, claiming to worship the Master of Mankind as their chosen deity. Their preachments that the light of their sun shall be swallowed by the void refers to a vision seen by their Maguses of a great eclipse. honoring their solar patron by daubing their war gear with arc lumens and pyres. In truth, the void they perceive is a bioship, so vast that it shall blot out the sun on their day of ascension. The worms of the Ur-tendril, discovered by the Adeptus Custodes deep beneath the throne world following the birth of the Great Rift. Captain General Trajan Valoris refused petitions of the Death Watch to deal with the threat, leading his own shield host to intervene personally. Descending into the Nord Afric underhives to face their foes, their vast numbers claimed one custodian per hundreds of their own, until Valoris slew the Broodlord within its inner sanctum, sparing his kin the sight of its murals within its lair. The cult Hydraic spread far and wide across the Segmentum Pacificus. For centuries, their pure-strain broods have been unleashed from the orbital dockyards of Vigilant Squadrex, starting splinter cults anew. Attacking one gene sect, incurring the wrath of all others, Hydraic's strength and numbers have proven exceptionally effective, as the broodmind harnessed by their high Nexos enacts reprisals, sharing insight of their actions to all of their domains. Bioconclaves of the cult of Hypodermoid, fashioning an injector claw known as the Hand of Aberrance, which rapidly injects mutagens into its victims. The involuntary mitosis endured by such hosts sees their bones shatter and muscles burst as they bloom into new lifeforms. The cult of the Blessed Wormlings, sustained solely on the beetles and annelids of the cemetery world of Masushi Pa. These solemn beings believe that their food source draws strength from the entombed within the earth, preaching that their embrace as lowly creatures in the eyes of their Star Emperor shall bring them close to his majesty. The Blessed Wormlings feast upon the carrion of battlefields and grave pits before departing their feast aboard mortuary void ships. The cult of the Hiveworm, claiming the shrine world of St. Holt within the Charnov expanse of Imperium Nihilus. This planet, having been harried by the Tau Empire's fifth sphere of expansion, sought shelter within their coastal cities. The Death Watch, dispatching their strike cruiser, Void Sentinel, from Watch Fortress Mortgard to aid the Order of the Blue Robe and St. Holt's Tidecasters. Watch Captain Agathon witness the cult's destruction of hives such as Torsay and Delina, focusing his efforts in sabotaging the shield generators of Leonis Hive, whilst kill teams within Hyde Gedronis cut off armored support from the Gate of the Emperor's Vengeance. Watch Captain Quintus destroyed the Tau lines at the capital of Boran Prime. Driving the Tau into the maws of the Gene Stealers, the Death Watch currently await the opportune time to redeploy once the victor of this ground war is concluded, reserving their strength until battle once more must be joined. For to attack a Gene Stealer cult unprepared is a grave mistake, and no matter the forces brought to bear, should a single disciple of the Children of the Stars escape, our glories shall once again achieve resurgence. We are biological perfection. We blend the ingenuity and cunning of mankind with the blessings of the Star Children. We are stronger, faster, more intelligent than any who challenge us. We will take that which is ours from the Upworlders and remake it in the image of our true masters. It is our destiny. This has been a tale of the Children of the Stars, read by the Disseminator. The tendrils of the Great Devourer spread all across known space, its benevolent pilgrims of the outer dark inviting us to become one with their grandeur. Each of us require a purpose in order to lead a fulfilling life, the demand of the mind to reach goals, ambitions, and higher meaning, the motive force to which sentience is tethered. Alone, we are weak. Divided, we are small. Yet in communion we grow stronger, united in our toil pursuing a shared goal. So do not deny the call of confraternity, whether it be of brotherhood, charity, or moral support. Otherwise you shall suffer from burdens too hefty to carry by your lonesome.